How did ancient humans stay clean without soap? Imagine waking up thousands of years ago. There is no shower, no shampoo, no deodorant, no toothpaste, and certainly no bottle of body wash waiting beside the bed. Yet ancient humans lived, traveled, hunted, worked, fought, and survived without the modern hygiene products we now consider essential. So how did they stay clean? Did ancient people simply accept being dirty? Or did they have surprisingly sophisticated ways of keeping their bodies clean long before modern soap existed? The answer is far more interesting than you might expect, because humans have been obsessed with cleanliness for thousands of years. And long before supermarkets, factories, and bathrooms, people were already experimenting with water, sand, ash, oils, plants, smoke, and even fermented substances to remove dirt and odors from their bodies. Tonight, we're going back through time to discover how ancient humans stayed clean without modern soap. To understand ancient hygiene, we first need to forget what cleanliness means to us today. Modern people usually associate cleanliness with running water, soap, hot showers, deodorant, and freshly washed clothing. But ancient humans had a different relationship with dirt. For early hunter-gatherers, dirt wasn't necessarily something that had to be eliminated completely. They lived outdoors. They walked through forests, deserts, grasslands, and rivers. Their bodies naturally became covered in dust, sweat, plant material, and animal residues. But they also had something incredibly important. Nature was their bathroom. Rivers, lakes, streams, and rain provided opportunities for washing, and water alone can remove a surprising amount of dirt. A person could rinse their body, scrub their skin with their hands, wash their hair, and clean their clothes in a river. Some groups may have bathed regularly simply because water was available. Others living in colder or drier environments had to find different solutions. And this is where human ingenuity began to appear. One of humanity's oldest cleaning tools may have been something incredibly simple: friction. Before soap, people could scrub their skin using materials found in their environment. Sand, fine ash, clay, plant fibers, animal hair, even rough pieces of natural material could help remove dirt and dead skin. Imagine someone living near a river thousands of years ago. They enter the water, wet their skin, and begin rubbing it with fine sand. The sand doesn't chemically dissolve grease like modern soap. Instead, it acts as an abrasive. It physically removes dirt and dead skin from the surface. The technique wasn't perfect, but it worked. And humans didn't stop there. Different cultures discovered that certain plants and natural materials could produce substances that behaved somewhat like soap. Some plants contain compounds called saponins. When crushed and mixed with water, these compounds can create foam and help lift oils and dirt. In other words, nature itself contains soap-like chemistry. Ancient people didn't need to understand molecules to discover this. They simply needed to notice that certain plants cleaned better than others. Few ancient civilizations were more associated with personal hygiene than ancient Egypt. The Egyptians lived along the Nile, one of the world's great rivers. Water was central to their civilization. But cleanliness wasn't simply about looking good. It could also be connected with social status, health, religion, and ritual purity. Wealthier Egyptians had access to bathing facilities and could spend considerable time caring for their bodies. They used oils and other substances on their skin. Why oil? Because oil can help loosen substances that cling to the skin, and it can also protect the skin from becoming excessively dry in a hot environment. But Egyptians also developed early forms of cleansing mixtures. Animal or plant fats could be combined with alkaline substances such as naturally occurring salts or ash. The resulting mixture could help remove grease and dirt. It wasn't the same as the scented liquid soap sitting in your bathroom today, but chemically the basic idea was surprisingly familiar. Ancient people had discovered that combining fats with alkaline materials could create a cleaning substance. And they had discovered it thousands of years before modern chemistry explained why it worked. Now travel forward to ancient Greece. Here, cleanliness became closely connected with exercise. Greek athletes trained intensely. They ran, they wrestled, they threw objects, they competed under the hot Mediterranean sun. And after exercising, they needed to remove sweat, dust, and oil from their bodies. But here's the strange part. They didn't necessarily depend on soap. Instead, athletes commonly used oil on their skin. After exercising, they could scrape the mixture of oil, sweat, dust, and grime from their bodies using a curved tool known as a strigil. The process sounds unusual today, but it was remarkably effective. The scraper removed the layer of oil and dirt from the skin. The Greeks also bathed in water and used public bathing facilities. So cleanliness wasn't simply about washing with soap. It was a combination of water, oil, scraping, exercise, and bathing culture. The body was treated almost like a surface that needed regular maintenance. Then came Rome, and the Romans took bathing to another level. Roman bathing wasn't simply something you did because you were dirty. It became a social experience. Across the Roman world, enormous public bath complexes were constructed. Some were architectural masterpieces. They could contain pools, heated rooms, exercise areas, gardens, and spaces for socializing. People could spend hours at the baths. But remember, soap still wasn't the centerpiece of Roman bathing. Romans used oils, scraping tools, water, and various cleansing preparations. A typical bathing experience could involve warming the body, sweating, applying oil, and then scraping the skin clean. The bathhouse was simultaneously a place for hygiene, relaxation, exercise, and conversation. In a strange way, the Roman bathhouse was simultaneously a gym, spa, community center, and bathroom all in one. And for many Romans, bathing wasn't an occasional luxury. It could be a regular part of life. Cleaning the body was only half the problem. What did ancient people do with their hair? Hair collects dust, oil, sweat, insects, smoke, and other debris. Without modern shampoo, people had to improvise. Water was the simplest solution, but depending on the culture and environment, people also used oils, plant extracts, clays, ashes, and other natural materials. Some plants contain cleansing compounds that can help remove oils. Others were used because of their fragrance. Ancient people also developed methods of grooming rather than simply washing. Combs were important. Archaeologists have discovered ancient combs made from wood, bone, ivory, and other materials. Combing wasn't only about appearance. It could help remove dirt, debris, and parasites. And in societies where bathing opportunities were limited, grooming became even more important. There was another problem ancient humans couldn't ignore: body odor. Sweat itself isn't always strongly smelly. The familiar odor develops largely because microorganisms interact with substances on the skin. Ancient people obviously didn't know about bacteria in the modern scientific sense, but they knew the practical problem. They knew certain smells were unpleasant, and they discovered ways to fight them. Fragrant plants were extremely important. Flowers, herbs, resins, spices, and aromatic oils could be used on the body, hair, or clothing. In some cultures, people burned fragrant materials. In others, scented oils were applied directly to the skin. Perfume wasn't simply about luxury. It could also serve as an early form of odor management. This is one reason ancient civilizations became famous for fragrances. People couldn't stop their bodies from producing sweat, but they could cover unpleasant odors with something better. There was another secret to ancient hygiene that is easy to overlook: clothing. Even if someone couldn't take a full bath every day, washing their clothes could make a huge difference. Clothing absorbs sweat, oils, dirt, smoke, and odors. So people could beat, rinse, brush, or wash garments in water. Some societies used alkaline materials, ash, or natural cleaning substances when available. And sunlight itself could help. Clothes could be dried in the sun after washing. Ancient people may not have understood ultraviolet radiation or microbial reduction, but they could observe something simple. Freshly washed and sun-dried clothing smelled better, and sometimes observation was all the science they needed.
Of course, we shouldn't romanticize the ancient world. Ancient hygiene varied enormously. A wealthy person living near a major river or urban bathhouse had very different options from a poor farmer living in a remote settlement. Climate mattered. Geography mattered. Water availability mattered. Social class mattered. And disease could spread easily where large populations lived close together. Ancient cities could struggle with waste, contaminated water, crowded housing, and poor sanitation. So, although ancient people understood many aspects of personal cleanliness, they didn't possess modern knowledge of germs, viruses, and disease transmission. They could smell bad water. They could see dirt. They could notice that certain habits seemed healthier, but they couldn't see the invisible organisms responsible for many infections. That would take thousands of years of scientific development. This is one of the biggest misconceptions. The answer is complicated. Some ancient people undoubtedly smelled strongly, but that doesn't mean everyone walked around covered in dirt and completely unwashed. Humans have always cared about appearance and social acceptance. If a community values cleanliness, people develop habits that support it. They wash, they groom, they change clothing, they use fragrances, they remove unwanted hair, they comb their hair, they clean their teeth, they find ways to manage sweat and odors, and they pass these habits from one generation to the next. In fact, ancient humans may have been much more familiar with natural methods of hygiene than we realize. They simply didn't have our modern products. The surprising truth. So, how did ancient humans stay clean without soap? They didn't rely on one magical solution. They built a system. Water removed dirt. Friction removed grime. Sand and ash could scrub. Plants could provide natural cleansing compounds. Oil could loosen substances from the skin. Scrapers could remove oil and dirt. Combs helped clean hair. Fragrant plants helped control odors. Fresh clothing helped maintain cleanliness. And bathing became a major cultural practice in some civilizations. The biggest difference between ancient hygiene and modern hygiene wasn't necessarily that ancient people didn't care about cleanliness. It was that they had fewer tools and less scientific knowledge. They worked with what nature gave them. And remarkably, they learned to turn simple materials into effective cleaning methods. Today, we turn a handle and clean water appears. We squeeze shampoo into our hands. We use soap, toothpaste, deodorant, and dozens of specialized products without giving much thought to where the idea of cleanliness came from. But thousands of years ago, none of this existed. There were no plastic bottles, no chemical laboratories, no modern plumbing, no antibacterial body wash. And yet, humans still wanted to feel clean. They watched nature, they experimented, they observed which plants worked. They discovered the cleaning power of water, ash, oils, minerals, and friction. Generation after generation, these discoveries became traditions, and eventually, those traditions helped lead humanity toward the sophisticated hygiene systems we have today. So, the next time you step into a warm shower and reach for a bottle of soap, remember something. The desire to wash away dirt is not modern, it is ancient. Long before bathrooms filled our homes, humans were already standing beside rivers, rubbing sand against their skin, combing their hair, applying fragrant oils, washing their clothes, and searching for better ways to stay clean. The modern bathroom may be new, but the human desire for cleanliness is almost as old as civilization itself.